Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this video is a quick preview and prediction for Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte. Of course this fight goes down on the 23rd of April, which is fast approaching, and Tyson Fury will defend his WBC and lineal heavyweight titles. Of course, Dillian Whyte is the mandatory challenger within the WBC, and the fight will be broadcast on BT Sports pay-per-view and ESPN pay-per-view in America. Takes place at Wembley Stadium in London. And yeah, I have to say, it's a fight I am looking forward to. It's certainly going to be a big event in the heavyweight division, and one of the bigger fights of the year. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Let's briefly break down the tale of the tape, and we shall start with the champion, Tyson Fury. He has a record of 31 wins, 0 defeats, 1 draw, 22 of those 31 wins coming by way of a knockout. Dillian Whyte has a record of 28 wins, 2 defeats, 19 of his 28 wins coming by way of knockout. Tyson Fury, of course, is listed as 6'9" with an 85-inch reach, whereas Dillian Whyte is listed as 6'4" with a 78-inch reach. So Tyson Fury, considerably the bigger heavyweight. He has a 5-inch height advantage, a 7-inch reach advantage, and on top of that, he will also be considerably heavier in the ring as well. So Tyson Fury is the all-round bigger guy, which gives Tyson Fury a huge advantage in this fight. Tyson Fury is 33 years old, whereas Dillian Whyte is 34 years old, and both guys are orthodox fighters. However, Tyson Fury can fight pretty well out of the southpaw stance as well. Now the tale of the tape is out of the way, I will briefly break down what I believe each guy should do to stand the best chance of winning this fight. And I think I'm going to start with Tyson Fury. Now with Tyson Fury in this fight, it's a weird one for me because Tyson Fury of old, who fought Derek Chisora in the second fight, who fought Vladimir Klitschko around that time period, I think that version of Tyson Fury absolutely plays with Dillian Whyte. I think he would be too good of a boxer, too long and rangy, the movement would be far too much, and I think he would befuddle Dillian Whyte. However, does that Tyson Fury exist anymore? Is this aggressive Tyson Fury down to necessity more so than choice? And that's one thing I've wondered. I have doubted whether Tyson Fury has those legs that he once had back in the day when he was more of a boxer. But stylistically, I do think Tyson Fury needs to switch it up a little in this fight with Dillian Whyte. Against Deontay Wilder in that third fight, much like the second fight, he applied a lot of pressure against Deontay Wilder. But unlike the second fight, I felt Tyson Fury was much more reckless in his approach, coming in straight lines, not taking his head off centre line, not enough use of a jab, not enough level changes, feints, etc. I felt he was much more sloppy in that third fight with Deontay Wilder, and you know, Wilder on a couple of occasions made Tyson Fury pay, of course. Going into this fight with Dillian Whyte, I think Tyson Fury needs to iron out those defensive defects if he is going to be aggressive. I'm not saying that version of Tyson Fury can't beat Dillian Whyte, who beat Wilder in the third fight, but I think he would be putting himself at a certain amount of risk given how hard Dillian Whyte can punch. So I think Tyson Fury needs to be a little more circumspect with his approach, a little bit more cautious in regards to what is coming back. I still expect Tyson Fury to be aggressive in this fight, but I believe he can do it behind a long jab from the outside. Keep that stick in Dillian Whyte's face, try to hold centre ring, maybe take a half step back as Dillian advances, and just time him as he overreaches with his attacks, which is something Dillian Whyte is very guilty of. He's got a habit of not always judging the distance so well, and he will throw out of range, and a little check jab, a quick check jab, something along those lines could actually make Dillian reset, or who knows, maybe even score a flash knockdown. But I want to see Tyson Fury pump that jab from round 1 against Dillian Whyte. Keep Dillian Whyte occupied with that lead hand, because Dillian's a guy who really has to set himself to punch. He's not particularly great at punching while moving forwards. He's not great at jumping in from range. So yeah, that jab from Tyson Fury is going to be paramount. And in the early rounds, I want to see Tyson Fury just try to bust up Dillian Whyte with that jab. Don't take too many risks early on. Obviously look for the counter as Dillian Whyte is lunging and trying to reach in. Try to time that right hand, the straight right, or even the check left hook. And play it relatively safe early on without necessarily giving up ground or giving up centre ring. As Dillian does advance, and on the occasions that he does get to the inside, I think Tyson Fury would be very wise to tie Dillian Whyte up, try to lean on the back of his neck and use that weight advantage, because fighting a guy like Tyson Fury who is using those tactics it's going to be extremely physically taxing. If you've got a guy like Tyson Fury leaning all over you and mauling you up close, and let's be real, Dillian Whyte's gas tank has been questioned, and Tyson Fury's got the attributes to really test that, not only with his punches but his sheer physicality. So I think that would be a beneficial move for Tyson Fury in this bout. As the fight progresses for Tyson Fury, I think Tyson Fury, going into the second half of this fight, then needs to really think about switching it up and then essentially forcing Dillian Whyte on the back foot. Instead of holding the centre ring with that jab, actually try to advance with it, keep Dillian at arm's length, but make him back up. One thing about Dillian Whyte, in my opinion, I don't think he's particularly effective at throwing off the back foot. Again, he needs to be set to throw his shots. So as the fight does play out, as it gets more rough and tough, as Dillian starts to gas, I think Tyson Fury in the second half of this fight, I think it could be wise to actually then try to push Dillian Whyte back and try to really force it on Dillian Whyte, similar to what he was doing against Deontay Wilder in that second fight. Take that approach, come in behind that jab, utilise those feints, try to take your head off centre line and really maul and bust up Dillian Whyte in the second half of this fight. Obviously, while doing that, Tyson needs to be aware of what is coming back. Obviously, that left hook of Dillian Whyte is arguably his best punch, but Dillian Whyte does have he does have a powerful overhand right. It's not always the most accurate, but the way Dillian Whyte throws it, Tyson Fury has been caught with that shot on a couple of occasions. Dillian Whyte can throw the overhand right. He'll kind of bring it up from low and fire it over the top. And sometimes Tyson has been caught with that shot, like against Steve Cunningham. I think Nevin Pikett threw the same shot as well. And I believe Wilder in one of the fights dropped Fury with a similar shot. So, Tyson needs to be aware of the overhand right. Don't just get fixated on the left hook of Dillian Whyte, because although Dillian's overhand right is inaccurate, it does carry power, and if it does land and Tyson Fury walks right onto it, it could definitely have a big effect. So yeah, Tyson needs to be careful of what is coming back in this fight. And yeah, to me, early on in this fight, he needs to dictate this fight with that jab from range, try to hold centre ring, make Dillian kind of box with him, but be forceful with it. It's a hard jab, a hard straight right hands. Keep Dillian guessing on the outside. And in the second half of this fight, I want to see Tyson Fury take the same approach that he took against Wilder in that second fight. But Tyson Fury has the height, he's got the reach, he's got the attributes, he's got the style to beat Dillian Whyte. But for me, the main thing for Tyson Fury is concentration. It's one of those fights, I describe it as a banana skin type fight. Tyson Fury should win, but Dillian Whyte is dangerous, and if he switches off, stranger things have happened. So yeah, Tyson Fury can't get too far ahead of himself in this fight. He's in there with a live dog, and that is going to be Tyson Fury's only real enemy in this fight, is complacency. He can't afford to let that set in this fight. Now, as for Dillian Whyte, for me, he's got a really tall task in this fight, quite literally, when it comes to Tyson Fury. I think with Dillian Whyte, he needs to approach this fight by trying to apply pressure in a nice high guard, trying to block the straight shots of Tyson Fury, and essentially apply pressure on Fury. I'd be firing that jab, but I wouldn't be aiming for the head of Tyson Fury. I'd be purely aiming at the chest for the most part, trying to maneuver Tyson Fury around the ring, almost like a cattle prod, and try to get Tyson Fury in stationary positions, whether it be in the corner, on the ropes, etc. And when you have Tyson Fury on the ropes or in the corner, I think Dillian Whyte should then start at the body with combinations. Obviously, Dillian Whyte is a good body puncher, and he's shown that in numerous fights, but I think he needs to finish with a headshot, like a left hook to the head, overhand right to the head, try to keep Tyson Fury guessing. That was one thing Otto Wallin did well against Tyson Fury on a few occasions, where he had Tyson Fury stationary against the ropes or in the corner, and he actually started landing some good body shots, but he wouldn't finish the combination by going upstairs. I think that could be a good little game plan for Dillian Whyte to try and catch Tyson Fury with something that he's not expecting. Now, although I want Dillian Whyte to apply pressure in this fight behind that high guard, again, the jab is going to be paramount, because if I'm Dillian Whyte, I don't want to get up close to Tyson Fury early on in this bout. It might seem like a sensible thing to do, but early on Tyson Fury himself is going to be fresh, and he will try to neutralise you by leaning on you, holding you, etc. And by him doing that, will drain Dillian Whyte's gas tank. So I think early on in this fight, it's paramount for Dillian Whyte, if he's applying pressure, not to get too greedy. Just try to force Tyson back with that jab, be jabbing to the stomach, jabbing to the chest, obviously throw jabs to the head as well, but primarily stick it in Tyson Fury's chest, try to walk him down, but don't get over eager and rush to the inside on your first chance. You know, try to work for the opening, try to maintain some space, to not allow Tyson Fury to smother you, not only smothering your punches, but draining your gas tank. I also want to see Dillian Whyte try to mix it up in this fight as well. Dillian Whyte is a weird fighter in the sense of he does spot the openings for counter punches, whether it's his left hook or the overhand right, but the problem with Dillian Whyte, his accuracy is pretty poor at times. But he does spot the openings pretty well, Dillian Whyte, and he needs to be looking for those against Tyson Fury. Maybe try to counter Tyson Fury's jab in particular from the southpaw stance. It could line up for Dillian Whyte's straight right hand. Tyson Fury's jab technique, he'll fire it from low, a quick jab, but he'll usually bring the hand back low as well. And if you can time that as Tyson is bringing that arm back, maybe that's a shot that could pose some success for Dillian Whyte in this fight. I don't think pressure alone will be enough for Dillian Whyte, so he does need to mix things up. He does need to try other things, and try to throw the odd counter in here and there to give Tyson Fury something else to think about. And yeah, for me, when it comes to Dillian Whyte, the only way he wins this fight is by stoppage. I have a hard time seeing Dillian Whyte winning this fight on points unless he scores multiple knockdowns. So Dillian needs to try to cut down Tyson, which is where the bodywork will be key, or alternatively, just land one massive punch to knock Tyson Fury clean out. And, for Dillian Whyte's flaws, he can counter on the occasion, and when he gets it right, it usually has devastating results. So, it's a weird one. For me, again, it's one of those fights. Also, I have to make this point. I need to see both guys on the scales, because I think, especially with Tyson Fury, we'll gather what he's trying to do. If he comes in this fight lighter than the two Wilder fights, I would imagine that he'll box a little bit more if he comes in lighter, but if he comes in the same sort of weight as the Wilder fights, then it's going to be the same sort of game plan. Apply pressure behind that jab and really try to basically maul Dillian Whyte into submission. So I am interested to see Tyson Fury's weight in this fight. Again, I go back to my original point. I think that Tyson Fury from a few years ago beats Dillian Whyte handily. But this new Tyson Fury, again, obviously still the big favourite, but I think this fight is more risky for Tyson Fury now than it would have been if it was the 2015 Tyson Fury. That's what I'm trying to say. But it's a good fight because of that, in my opinion. It's a good fight because Dillian Whyte does have that power to keep you interested. But aside from power, Dillian Whyte doesn't do anything better than Tyson Fury as far as I'm concerned. Maybe he's a better body puncher, cool, but in most other areas, Tyson Fury is just better than Dillian Whyte. He's taller, he's longer, he's got a better jab, he can box from orthodox and southpaw, he's got a better gas tank, I would say he's got a better chin, got better recovery powers, more athletic. Tyson Fury is pretty much better than Dillian Whyte in most aspects, but Dillian Whyte does have that power, which Tyson needs to be aware of. But in regards to the fight, I think it's going to be fun. I think Dillian Whyte will have a couple of moments. Maybe even Tyson Fury suffers a bit of a scare in this fight. Maybe gets hurt. Maybe even gets dropped. Who knows? But I think eventually Tyson Fury will more than likely grind down Dillian Whyte in this fight and stop him late on. I could see this one going to points as well and Tyson Fury winning, but I'm going to go with a very late stoppage for Tyson Fury, rounds 10 to 12, somewhere in and around those rounds. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think Dillian will put up a spirited effort. I don't think he's going to disgrace himself. He'll have some moments, but I think Tyson Fury will just prove to be too big and too good for Dillian Whyte. So a late stoppage for Tyson Fury, in my opinion. But what about you guys? How do you see this fight going? Who are you picking and how? Are you going with Dillian Whyte, the underdog, or the favourite in Tyson Fury? Share your thoughts below. Peace.